Now in this session, we are going to discuss about the environment management subject, and under that we are going to discuss about the sustainability reporting. So what exactly this sustainability is? So to sustain the environment, what should do, what are the remedies, what are the precautions, what are the preventions, all these things are included to sustain the environment, and that characteristics is called as sustainability. Now at the global level, how to report this sustainability, that is the main concept for this session under this environment management, right? So this presentation contains the elements of sustainability reporting, the purpose of sustainability reporting, advantages, disadvantages of sustainability reporting, then GRI, G4 guidelines, that is Global Reporting Initiative, then what is the ecosystem concept and its structure, then monitoring and analysis of industrial effluent, and GBC, that is called as green building concept, right? So this sustainability and sustainability reporting having the part that is elements, purpose, advantages, disadvantages. So there is another part that is GRI, there is another concept ecosystem, and there is another concept GBC. I have linked all these contents in this presentation intentionally. So sustainability currently emerges as a commonly accepted obligation rather than responsibility for organizations, right? So in the previous years, generally in various conferences, various meetings, which is at a global level, at national level or international level, it is the topic which is going to discussed or discussed already, but now it is accepted as an obligation rather than the responsibility of organizations. Initially, starting off as a part of corporate communication, operation by companies, sustainability reporting must be seriously handled by reporting organizations in view of the information it includes and the potential benefits it brings to the organizations. Now, this sustainability reporting is not a legal requirement. It is not a specific standard for a specific country, and that is why most of the organizations are neglecting this concept. But the organizations who are serious about the environment, who are serious about the environment sustainability, they are doing this activity as a voluntary part, and it is not an essential condition or mandatory condition as per the legal requirement in that state or in that nation. It refers generally to the capacity for the biosphere and human civilization to coexist. Process of people maintaining change in a homeostatic balanced environment in which the exploitation of the resources, the direct of investments, the orientation of technological development, and institutional change are all in harmony and enhance both current and future potential to meet the human needs and aspirations. Now we all know that we are the developing country, we are going to develop the nation, we are doing some activities as a developing activities like building the constructions, building the different structures, large structures, mega structures. We are going to start the different startups. We are going to start the different companies. Now the Prime Minister announces the Atmanirbhar. Now under this title also, we are going to develop various activities. We are going to start different activities. But simultaneously, with these activities, there is adverse effect on the environment, and that is why we must take care about the environment while doing all these activities. That is called as human activities, and these human activities obviously affect adversely on the environment. So we should maintain this balance of development and the balance of environment. For many in the field, sustainability is defined on pillars of environment, economic, and social. Right? So these are the main three elements of this sustainability. So in this picture, I have shown these elements. So these are the basic elements of sustainability: social, environment, and economic. So this picture clearly shows that all these three elements are overlap to each other. It means they are connected to each other, and the common area at the center is nothing but the sustainable. So if the social element is bearable, if it is equitable with economic, and it is viable with environment, then that particular activity is sustainable, right? So on the basis of this, you can understand what exactly the social activities are, what are the economic activities, and what are the environment activities. If all these activities are bearable, equitable, and viable, then there is no adverse effect or less adverse effect on the environment, and we can say that this is the sustainable activity. What is the purpose of this sustainability reporting? Why we are going to report this sustainability or about the sustainability? So it is a reporting tool that publicly shares the data demanded by the sustainability index, the performance standards of the leading international financial institution and other international organizations such as UN Global Compact. So United Nations or other institutions, especially when we are talking about the finance, where we are talking about the economic as an element, then we must think about the performance of that particular activity as far as this sustainability is concerned. So how to determine this performance? So there is a sustainability index from which we can understand what exactly the performance of that particular institution, particular activity as far as the global level is concerned. And that is why this sustainability reporting is important. It is a most important communication channel that an organization has with its internal and external stakeholders. So due to this reporting, we have to make the different elements, we have to make or thought of different elements, whether it is a social element, whether it is economic element, or whether it is environmental elements. So all the activities, their impact, their measures, that may be a environment measures, that may be a control measure, that may be a treatment measures. So all these things are involved in this sustainability reporting, and this data is communicated to the internal and external stakeholders. So all the people, all the employees which are in the company, they are knowing about this sustainability, they are knowing about these activities, they are knowing about this impact of all these activities or the development activities on the environment, and the other people other than the company people are also knowing, that is nothing but the external stakeholders. So through this communication channel, you can make aware about these sustainability activities, sustainability reporting, and the elements which are related to the environment, social, and economic to the internal as well as to the external stakeholders. It is very valuable tool which a company can use to share the environmental performance and environmental activities, the opportunities it offers for employees, and the social benefit it creates, in addition to sharing its financial performance. So we have already discussed about these things, that each and every company is having the financial report of each financial year, and they are published on the website or published to the stakeholders, that may be internal stakeholder or the external stakeholder. So every year, what exactly the performance of that particular company as far as the finance is concerned is going to publish. Now simultaneously, with the help of this sustainability reporting, company can publish the environmental activities, companies can publish the performance of environmental activities, opportunities and different offers to the employees or for the employees for their social benefit. So it is a valuable tool for making the benefits to the society, benefits to the employees. Now the different purpose of this sustainability reporting is, to prepare this report, we'll need to establish a structure for the provision of environmental data and social data, right? So in the sustainability reporting, we have already mentioned that there are three elements, that is environment, social and finance. Normally, most of the organizations are taking care about the financial data, but very less companies are there who are taking care about this environmental data and social data. So with the help of this sustainability reporting, the companies or organizations can prepare these two data. And for the structure, for the preparation of this report, we have to collect all this data. So the data are like energy consumption, emissions, amount of savings, environmental benefits from company operations, etc. So these are nothing but the examples of the environmental data. Then social data like educational and gender breakdown for employees, then total hours of training they receive, then settlement rate for customer complaints, benefits from corporate social responsibilities project, because normally government has this idea that is called as normally CSR, that is corporate social responsibilities, and government has given permission to the organization or give the compulsion to the organization that you should connect with the society with 2% of total funds of your organization, especially for the CSR activities. And that is why companies or organization can connect with the society, and this data can be useful for this sustainability reporting. Then to maintain the trust among the society, among the employees, among the other stakeholders of the company, we should make this sustainability reporting. So that is one of the advantage of this sustainability reporting. So this sustainability reporting makes the transparency between the business and stakeholders with respect to non-financial performance, because we have already mentioned that financial activities, financial reporting, financial performance have already a routine activity for every organization, but this is the non-financial performance activities. So due to this sustainability reporting, all the stakeholder can understand what exactly this organization is going to do for the social cause and for the environment cause. This is one of the advantage, so that the society as well as the other stakeholders can trust you for this sustainability reporting. Then another advantage of this sustainability reporting is helps in improvement of the process and the whole system. So due to this sustainability reporting, due to the collection of environmental factors, due to the collection of the financial factor, due to the collection of social activities, so all these activities, all these corrections, all these corrective actions, or the connections between the social, environment and economy, there is improvement in the organization's process, because we can think of about the non-renewable energy sources, we can think of about the energy reduction or energy conservations or some other concepts which are directly related to the environment, and obviously the whole system can improve. Some processes or some parameters or some steps can improve in the process as far as the environment is concerned. So there is another benefit. Now the next benefit is enhancing the decision making strength. So sustainability acts as a means of introducing innovation for companies and attain competitive advantage in the market. Because nowadays, um, the awareness about the environment, awareness about the eco-friendly products, awareness about the energy reduction or energy efficient technologies, energy efficient products is also increasing, and that is why the market or the stakeholders are required that companies should manufacture the eco-friendly product, companies should manufacture the uh, environmental non-damaging products, or the products which are not going to pollute any type of parameters or the field of environment. That may be air pollution, that may be a water pollution, that may be a soil pollution, that may be a noise pollution, etc. So due to this requirement or due to this awareness among the society, among the stakeholder, we can think of about the different processes, different raw materials, different technologies, and that is why innovation can be happen in the companies. That is one of the advantage. Then next is reduce compliance cost. So analyzing and measuring sustainability reporting help the companies to work on the collection of necessary data that is cost effective, regulate requirements, and avoid breaches while making company to tackle issues in effective and efficient ways. So as far as the environment is concerned, nowadays the norms are going to stringent. So that may be a Maharashtra Pollution Control Board or any type of state pollution control board or central pollution control board or Ministry of Environment and Forest. So these ministries or these pollution control boards are going to make the norms or the rules and regulations stringent and stringent. And that is why for this purpose, to comply this requirement of this pollution control board or comply these notifications from the MOEF, this sustainability reporting also helps to reduce this compliance cost. Then there is one advantage, that is building strategies for the improvement. So analysis of strength and weakness with the help of sustainability report provides a greater vision and makes companies to work on weaknesses and regulate strategies for overall development. Now organizations always think of for the overall development, but in the conventional process of these strategies or conventional process of thinking, generally the organizations are thinking of only a financial view. But due to this sustainability reporting, companies are going to think about the social causes, to think about the economic causes, and then simultaneously think about the economic causes. And that is why these strategies are going to improve from the future point of view, from the environment point of view, and from the bright future point of view. Now there are some disadvantages of this sustainability reporting. The first component is related with the design, which is further an established set of common practices. So it is a difficult or critical task, and also sometimes it is not affordable to design a particular process, to design a particular component, to design a particular raw material, or to use the raw material by changing process parameters, and we have to avoid the environmental adverse impact. So for that purpose, sometimes it is a hectic work to design these types of components for our conventional process. The second one is legitimacy, that is dependent on the multiple stakeholders. Now, some stakeholders required the minimum cost, some stakeholders required a particular material of that product, some stakeholders required routine activity, some stakeholders required there should not be change in the process, there should not be change in the product, there should not be change in the routine processes. So these requirements are nothing but the hurdles for the changes as far as the environment, social and economic elements are concerned. So this is one of the disadvantage. Then third one is monitoring, which concerns the rules for monitoring the practices. Now for this sustainability reporting, we have to monitor, we have to measure various elements that may be in the as a air pollutant, that may be as a water pollutant, that may be as a soil pollutant, that may be the different elements in the working environment, different elements in the processes, different elements which can affect or adversely affect on the surrounding of your company, and all this monitoring is difficult as far as the rules are concerned, because normally organizations are mainly concerned about the MPCB or SPCB basic norms, and they are going to comply all these basic norms only, right? So this is a value addition, but this is also a cost addition activity, that is nothing but the monitoring of different components, that is environment components. But there is a non-uniformity on just first component, and without the first component the practice can't be progressed further to the other components. So it is a fact that without the first component we can't progress into this direction or going toward this direction about this sustainability reporting. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of this sustainability reporting. Some other issues which are related to this are: the second major issue is the difference in enforcement for sustainability reporting. So we can't force to a particular organization to do these activities because it is not a legal requirement, it is not a particular standard like ISO certification. So that is why companies or the organizations are not interested in this sustainability reporting. But when the management or the top management or the management which are going to concern about this environment, they are obviously thinking of this sustainability reporting. If maintaining sustainability reporting is optional, then there is no authority for penalizing an organization for non-compliance. So we have already discussed this is not an essential task, and that is why it is the optional one. So there is no penalty, there is no fine due to this non-compliance of this reporting. Again, an organization can develop its own framework for sustainability reporting, but in case of any misstatement, no penalizing is there for such organizations. So in case if any of the organization is interested to do this activity, that is nothing but the sustainability reporting, then there is a chance or there may be a chance of mistakes or missing data or a wrong data in that framework. But in case if it is a case, there is again no penalizing, no penalty from any type of organization, as it is the optional one. So these are the different issues related to the sustainability reporting. It is a voluntary, already discussed, and selective disclosure by organization practicing sustainability can create potential bias. This further should be prevented to disclose negative and bad news. And that is why if you really want to do this activity, you should go through all these sustainability reporting guidelines. You should discuss all these things actually to the companies who are doing this activity, and then only you should go for this sustainability reporting. Then different issues, there are certain limitations regarding the measurement of social responsibilities related with sustainability, that is further most challenging to the measure and quantify, because in this sustainability reporting we have to write the quantity as well as the quantity, and with reference to some guidelines, right? So there is again, it is a hectic work to monitor, to measure all these parameters, and we have to maintain all these parameters within the permissible limits with respect to some standards, that is depending on the state and nations. Then furthermore, motivation and requirement of a company for compliance is not clear, because generally no organization is going to motivate you for completing or for doing this sustainability reporting, and that is why there is less motivation to do this activity. For example, US companies are closely analyzed and evaluated by the environmental groups that are further US based, but this is motivation make US companies to develop domestic sustainability rather than international one, right? Now it is one of the case that US companies are monitoring by the environmental groups, and that is why US companies are going to focus on the requirement of that particular environmental groups only. They are not going to bother about this international guidelines given under this sustainability reporting or GRI guidelines, right? So this is one of the case that may be the case for other countries and for other state also. Now the next concept is what exactly the GRI is. What is GRI? It is a global reporting initiative, right? It is one of the sustainability reporting framework which assess social, environmental, and economic sustainability. Now we have discussed about this sustainability. We have discussed about the sustainability reporting. We have discussed about the main three elements of this sustainability reporting, that is social, environment, and economic. And for this environmental, social, and economic sustainability, for the sustainability reporting, these are the guidelines designed at global level, and that is why it is called as global reporting initiative, right? The scope of this GRI as monitoring framework is process industry, which can make reports about their sustainability development. It is the best known voluntary framework for sustainability reporting. The framework uses indicators for the assessment of three pillars of the sustainability. So these three pillars is nothing but the three elements. For social sustainability, the subcategories according to which the indicators are sorted could be labor practices and decent work, human rights, society, and product responsibility. So in this social sustainability, these are the different sub-elements involved under this category or subcategory. The main groups of GRI is to give information to the stakeholders so they can make proper decisions about investments or purchase of certain products. Because nowadays, due to the awareness of these environmental products, eco-friendly products, some stakeholders are always thinking of the bright future about they are always concerned about the environmental impacts, and that is why these GRI guidelines, these sustainability reporting can help some of the organizations who are really doing a great work in this sustainability reporting, so the investment in that organization can increase. The GRI first draft was released in 1999, entitled Sustainability Reporting Guidelines. So this GRI initially called as Sustainability Reporting Guidelines in 1999. GRI is the first global framework for comprehensively reporting sustainable development and encompasses the three pillars: economic, environment, and social issues. Over 60 countries have used GRI as their reporting basis. So near about 60 countries are involved in this GRI guidelines, means they have accepted these guidelines as a global initiative for the environment, for the social components, and for the economic components. So this is the structure of this GRI, where you can understand from this flow chart. So the main element is transparency. So in this GRI guidelines, transparency is one of the major factor. So you can understand all the elements, whatever the reports has made by the organizations, that is published in the public for the internal as well as for the external stakeholders. So anyone can refer these GRI reports. Then inclusiveness. So all the elements which we have already discussed should be included in this GRI report. So this inclusiveness consists of informs, different informs. So these different informs may be decisions about what information to report, then completeness about the information, then relevance of this information, then sustainability context. So all these are the elements under this one type of informs. The another type of informs are quality related. So quality or reliability of reported information, accuracy of these quality parameters, then neutrality of these quality parameters, and comparability. So comparison maybe with the other companies, comparison maybe with the international companies, comparison with the other global companies which are having similar processes or having similar products manufacturing. Then auditability. So on the basis of these points, the organization can go through the audits, and on the basis of this audit report, you can understand what exactly the quality is going to maintain with reference to the environment, economic, and social parameters. Then another involves the accessibility of reported information. So there is a clear-cut information which is available on the GRI guidelines on the websites. So you can refer all the GRI reports, and that is why it is an element that is nothing but a clarity and timeliness. So you have to make a report as per the GRI guidelines, and it is a time bounded activity, right? So from this structure you can understand what exactly the GRI is. The metrics for sustainability for process industry, right? Now most of the industries under the MIDCs of different states or in the different industries in the different countries, most of the companies are the process industry, and that is why we are going to study this metrics for the sustainability for process industry. Institution of Chemical Engineer develop metrics for sustainability. Now in majority of the cases in the process industry, most of the industries are chemical industries who are producing the different pollutants in different stages or in the different processes. So most of the chemical industries are going to pollute air, that may be going to pollute water, and that may going to pollute soil if specific precautions are not going to maintain by the organizations, or a specific treatment is not maintained under the organizations, right? And that is why Institute of Chemical Engineers has developed the different parameters for these chemical industries. The environmental indicators are material intensity, energy, then water, land, emissions to atmospheric, aquatic, and land. So the energy consumption is one of the parameter. So we should use this energy efficient technology. We should use energy efficient motors. We should use energy efficient lights or the illumination equipments or instruments, etc. We should use the energy efficient fans. So there are different products which are available in the market nowadays. So nowadays we are knowing about, or the customers is also knowing about, the 5-star rating which is designed by the BEE, that is Bureau of Energy and Efficiency. So we must know all these parameters, we must know all these indicator, what exactly this indicated. Say for example, there is a refrigerator or washing machine or AC, which is having 5-star rating. So this 5-star rating clearly indicates that this particular equipment consumes less energy as compared to the other equipments which may be 4-star, 3-star, 2-star or 1-star rating, right? So due to this less amount of energy, obviously the energy requirement is less. And if the energy requirement is less, obviously the energy production requirement is again less. That is, the demand of power is less. If the demand of power is less, then obviously the fuel required, that is nothing but generally fossil fuels, because up till now we are using coal, oil or gas, that is the fossil fuels we are using for generating this power. Very less amount of renewable energy are using for generating this power. And you can understand from this example that how this energy efficient equipments or instruments can impact on the environment in a very good manner. So the different example, if the energy equipment is a 1-star or 2-star rating, then obviously the demand of power is more and the fossil fuel requirement is more, and obviously the carbon emission, that may be in terms of CO, CO2, etc., is more as compared to the 5-star rating equipments. So this is one of the example. You can understand that how the energy in a similar way, water, land, material and different types of emission can the parameters which clearly indicate what exactly the environment is in that particular chemical industry. So another parameters are economic indicators. So simple economic indicator is profit, then values, taxes and some investments. Then the social indicators are workplace, so that may be an employment situation, health and safety, and society is another parameter under these social indicators. So these are the different environmental, economic and social indicators which is designed by the Institute of Chemical Engineer, and except for the specific indicators, weighing factors are also provided for the environmental impacts. Now there is another metrics or the indicators that is called as BASF eco-efficiency metrics. So BASF also design or develop the different factors, that is eco-analysis based, some parameters like total cost from customer viewpoint, then LCA, that is life cycle analysis, then impacts on the health of people, dangers for the environment and some other parameters. So what exactly these parameters means? So these are the different aspects which must study by the organizations, especially the organizations who are going to adversely impact on the environment, right? So we have to calculate the total cost from the customer viewpoint of view, because customers are using the product, and after the uses of this product, if the product is again not energy efficient, then obviously energy requirement is more, then adverse impact is what? If the product has a very less life, then again the it generates a waste in a very less time, so it against adversely impact on the environment. Then we must study the LCA, that is called as life cycle analysis. So that is nothing but analysis of a product from starting of raw material. Say for example, if you are going to produce a plastic product like a pen, then you have to think of what exactly the raw material of this pen is, then what is the impact of this raw material on the environment. Then after processing through the various stages in the reactors, in the different column, etc., If the intermediates are formed, then what is the impact of these intermediates on the environment? If there is a byproduct or waste product, then what is the impact of this waste product or byproduct on the environment? And after producing the final product, then what is the impact of this final product on the environment? So all the stages, throughout the life cycle of this product, that is from the raw material to the final packing or to the use of by the customers, all these things should be studied, and that is called as LCA, that is life cycle analysis. So due to this LCA, we can easily analyze the particular product and their impacts on the environment. Then impacts on the health of people. So if suppose these paints are nothing but hazardous material as a raw material, if it is a toxic material, or if some toxic or other materials which are not a healthy materials are produced as a intermediates or waste product or byproduct, then we have to study all these impacts of these products on the health of the people. Then dangers of the environment, for the environment. So some products, some raw materials, some waste products, some byproducts, or some effluents are dangerous to the environment. So that may be in the form of liquid, that may be in the form of solid, that may be in the form of gases. So there are different examples, variety of examples from the different industries are there, that some of the chemical components are dangerous to the environments. So we must study all these eco-analysis parameters or the aspect parameters. Then another parameters are risk potentials. So if I'm going to use this particular product, then what is the risk to the health, risk to the environment, and risk as far as the different hazards are concerned. So all these risks should be studied, that is the risk potential. Then weighting of this LCA. So we have already discussed about this LCA. Then relationship between the ecology and economy. So we have to make a balance between this ecology and economy, because nowadays if you think of the eco-friendly product, so obviously at initial level most of the renewable energy equipments and eco-friendly equipments or the products are most costlier than the conventional one, and that is why we have to make the balance by doing the innovations, by thinking of the different alternatives, by thinking of different energy cutting and different processes, or by reduction of the energy utilizations, or by using the different renewable or free energy sources, so that we can make balance between this ecology and economy. And that is why many of the people are not going for these eco-friendly products, because the cost of the most of the product is higher than the conventional products or the non-eco-friendly products. Then weakness analysis, we have to study this weaknesses in that particular product as far as this environment is concerned. Then scenario assessment. So what exactly the scene in the India, what exactly the scene in the state, what exactly the scene in that particular district, in the city, in the organization, nearby MIDC, etc. We must study all these parameters, because in some of the areas, some of the raw materials which are useful for the eco-friendly products are available in the plenty of amount, and that is why the cost of the product may be less in that particular area, and we must go for the production, or we must go for the installation of the company in that particular area, so that overall process or the production cost should be less as compared to the product other than these eco-friendly products, right? So we must assess all these scenario as far as these raw materials availability and costing of this raw materials and products is concerned. Then business options. If the Indian government or state government or other government or some standards are required, these things, that is eco-friendly products or less environmental impacts products, or some rules and regulations are incorporated, or some amendments are done in the existing rules and regulation, then there will be a chance or the future like business. Say for example, nowadays we are working on a latest technology. We are using the mobiles, we are using the laptops, palm tops, tabs, PCs, etc. But very less companies or organizations are thinking of the e-waste management. Now the e-waste rule is incorporated in the state, in the nation. Then there are very less authorized recycler of this e-waste, and that is why e-waste can be a business option, a very good business option, because now the government is going to become to make these options, that is e-waste options, as a stringent norms in the future, and that is why we can think of the recycling of this e-waste as a business, right? Nowadays the plastic is banned in some of the states, and that is why we can also think of the substitute or the alternatives of the plastics. So that is again another example of these business options. So we have to think of all these aspects under this eco-efficiency matrix. Now there is another matrix that is designed by the CWRT, that is Center for Waste Reduction Technologies. So it is CWRT developed an approach using LCA to evaluate environmental and social cost on the same basis as economic cost, so that all of these three pillars, that is elements, can be estimated with the same standards. So CWRT mainly focuses on the LCA, that is life cycle assessment, and by considering these main three elements of this sustainability. So these costs are categorized as direct cost and indirect cost and some future liabilities. So we all know what exactly the direct cost is and what exactly the indirect cost is. So when the cost is directly involved in the production, in the process, in the energy consumption, in the utilities, in the handling or storage of material, etc. So all this cost is nothing but the direct cost. So that may be a capital investment, that may be a fixed or labor cost, that may be a feedstock cost, that may be a waste disposal cost, that may be a operating cost, that may be a maintenance cost. So for operating all these reactors, all these boilers, furnaces, heat exchangers, etc., we have to invest some cost. Then when we are processing all these raw materials, then obviously we require some utilities, that is air, steam, water, compressed air, etc. And to maintain all these activity, to maintain all these parameter, we have to do the maintenance, and that is why all these costs are considered under this direct cost. Now the cost which is not directly involved, that is called as indirect cost. So non-allocated and overhead cost are nothing but the indirect cost. Now there is a third element in this CWRT matrix is future liabilities. So some fines, penalties, legal fees are nothing but the future liability elements, because in the future, as far as these government initiatives are concerned, they are going to they are going to make the stringent norms as far as the environment is concerned, as far as the plastic is concerned, and as far as the e-waste is concerned. as far as the hazardous waste is concerned, as far as the storage handling of the hazardous waste is concerned, and that is why we can observe many of the rules and regulations are amended in the 2016, which are directly related to the environment, right? So the penalties, the fines are also increased in a multiple manners. So if there is a fine of 100, now there is a fine will be near about 500, and that may be near about 1000 in the near future. And that is why we can understand what exactly the penalties or fines or the legal fees will be for the environment costs. Then business interruptions, cost of environmental cleanup. So all these elements or the cost are under the future liabilities, because depending on the legal requirement, depending on the changes in the rules and regulation as far as the state and central government is concerned. So we have to do all this activity, we have to follow all this activity as far as the new amendments are concerned. But if you are not going to follow, if you are not going to manage all this activity, then we have to pay the fines, we have to pay the cost, we have to invest something for the environmental cleanup. Then the fourth parameter under this matrix is intangible internal cost. So for maintaining the reputation, there will be again a different cost is there. Then for the customer acceptance and loyalty, employee morale and safety, we have to invest something, we have to pay something, and that is nothing but the intangible internal cost. Then the fifth element is intangible external cost. So in the previous elements, all these reputation maintenance or the customer acceptance and loyalty, then employee morale, all these are the internal stakeholders, and that is why it is under the intangible internal cost. Now for the external stakeholders, we have to maintain, we have to add some cost, that is cost borne by the society, environmental cost within the compliance. So for compliance also we have to add some cost, that is intangible external cost. So these are the different metrics that is designed by the CWRT, BASF and some GRI, right? Now what exactly the ecosystem is? So this is another concept which is related to the environment again, and that is why I have linked this ecosystem concept and structure. But we all know that these ecosystem concepts are at a school level nowadays, because at the school level also in some of the standards, these environmental awareness, these ecosystem concepts, then pollution concepts, global warming, all these concepts are incorporated at the initial level, at the school level, that may be a secondary school level or in some of the cases at primary level. Now, but still we are going to recall all this ecosystem concept. The ecosystem is the structural and functional unit of ecology, where the living organisms interact with each other and the surrounding environment. So this is clearly focusing on the ecological activity, that is living organisms interact with each other and with surroundings. In other words, ecosystem is a chain of interaction between organisms and their environment. Ecosystem was first coined by H. Tansley, an English botanist in 1935. So from this diagram, from this structure, you can understand what exactly the ecosystem is, right? So you can observe this diagram and the elements of this ecosystem. So this is sun, that is solar energy obtained from the sun. Now these plants are developed, plants are growth, and you know that for the photosynthesis process, for the growth of these plants, solar energy is required, because this photo is nothing but the energy pockets, and these energy pockets are coming from this solar energy, that is from the sun. So after growing, after developing these plants, it is connected to the herbivores and carnivores. So now you can understand these animals consume these plants, that may be a part of this plant, that may be a part of the trees, especially when we are talking about this consumption, the leaves of the trees, right? Then it is again connected to the detrivorous, so it is a deconsumption activity, and it is these plants are also connected to the atmosphere. So when these plants are growing, obviously the plants are consuming the CO2 which is available in the environment, that is inhaling the CO2. So it is nothing but a sink of CO2. These plants are nothing but the sink of CO2, and that is why naturally this CO2 can be balanced with the help of this tree. So we are consuming oxygen and trees are consuming CO2. So for the plant growing purpose, the water is also essential element, and that is why all these oxygen, CO2, water are the main elements of this atmosphere for these ecosystems, right? So with the help of this sunlight, with the help of this atmosphere, there is a decomposition of this natural waste, and after decomposition it is converted uh, into the soil, and some elements are acts as a fertilizer, that is biocompost or natural fertilizer in the soil. So again this soil can be utilized for plant growing, right? So this is a complete cycle which we can understand, and all these elements are connected with each other, and that is why it is called as the different components of this ecosystem, and this diagram is called as structure of this ecosystem. So from this structure you can understand what exactly the concept of ecosystem is. Now from this diagram also you can understand which are the different components directly related to the ecosystems. So there are mainly two components, that is biotic component and abiotic components. So biotic components means related to the bio, so that is why living components, and some are abiotic components. So under these biotic components, some producer, some consumers, and some decomposers. So all these are the living organisms. So decomposers generally are the bacteria. Some consumers are nothing but the animals, and these producers are nothing but the plants. Right? Then you can understand from these consumers also, that is heterophobe, primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary. So some consumers are of primary nature, some are of secondary, some are tertiary, and some are quaternary. So there is no need of explain what exactly this primary, secondary, and tertiary and quaternary. You can understand from the examples of living organisms. Then under these abiotic components, there is a climatic and edaphic components, that is the subcomponents of these abiotic components. So under this climatic, you can understand rain, light, wind, and temperatures. So these are the main or subcomponents of climate. So this climate is under the abiotic because this is not the living organism, right? So another abiotic component is edaphic, means soil, pH value, minerals, and then topography. So depending on these component also, the type of plants, the growth of plants, and the products of all these plants can be depend. So depending on the climate, depending on these parameters like topography, minerals, the pH value of that soil, and the different characteristics of the soil, the different agricultural products are grown, and depending on the agricultural products different animals are attracted, and depending on the different animals again this cycle is going to rotate. So all these elements you can understand, these are the parts of the ecosystem. Now there are mainly two types of ecosystems, that is terrestrial ecosystems and aquatic ecosystems. So terrestrial ecosystems are exclusively land-based ecosystems. So when ecosystem is mainly based on land, then it is called as terrestrial ecosystems. There are different types of terrestrial ecosystems that is distributed around various geological zones, that is forest ecosystems, grassland ecosystems, tundra ecosystems, and desert ecosystems. So we have already studied all these types of ecosystems at school level. Then another type of aquatic ecosystem is freshwater ecosystems and marine ecosystems. These are the subtypes of these aquatic ecosystems. Aqua means water. So this ecosystem is related to the water, or it is based on the water. So under that again, these are the different two subgroups of these ecosystems. Then what is the function of these ecosystems? It regulates the essential ecological processes, supports life systems, and renders stability. So all the ecological process, whatever the essential elements are there, what the process required is there, all these things or the regulations is done by these ecosystems. It is also responsible for the cycling of nutrients between biotic and abiotic components. So all these things, that is soil is related to the decomposition again, and decomposition product is again involved in the soil. So all these components are related to each other, and all the balance is done by the naturally or ecosystem process. It maintains a balance among the various trophic levels in the ecosystem. It cycles the minerals through the biosphere. The abiotic components helps in the synthesis of organic components that involves the exchange of energy. So obviously you can understand all the processes, all the different operations, which are the natural operations involved in the ecosystems. So everything is balanced if it is not disturbed by the human activity. That is called as anthropogenic activities. If the anthropogenic activities are not there, then obviously this ecosystem, this nature is balanced by their own activities, right? But in the title of development, we are doing various activities, that is anthropogenic activities, and that is why we are going to disturb, or we have already disturbed, this balance of ecosystems. Now there is a different concept that is called as monitoring and analysis of industrial effluent. So what exactly the effluent is? So we must understand influent and effluent. So influent is nothing but the flowing of water or gas or other elements in the process, that is influent, ion. And if after a process, if there is a liquid or gases, then it is called as effluent, EFFLUENT. So it is an outflowing of water or gas to a natural body of water from the structure such as wastewater treatment, plant, sewer pipe, or industrial outfall. So whatever the liquid or water or mixed water or the gases coming out from the wastewater treatment plant, coming out from the sewer pipes, coming out from the industrial outfall are called as effluents. So effluent in engineering is the stream exiting a chemical reactor. So generally when the chemical industries are there, then you can call it as a chemical reactor. If there is a general or engineering processes, then the effluent is from the wastewater treatment plant or from the sewer pipes. Then what exactly the effluent monitoring is? So to monitor the different parameters, different components of this effluent is nothing but the effluent monitoring, right? So for that purpose, for the component analysis, we have to take the sample, we have to collect the samples from the wastewater, from the sewer pipe, from the different exit of the industries, and that is called as effluent monitoring, right? So these are the parameters which we have to monitor, which we have to collect, which we have to analyze for the industrial effluents. Because there are different rules and regulations, there is a control from the State Pollution Control Board, there are some guidelines from the State Pollution Board that this parameter should be in the range of this only, right? Say for example, if SPCB is going to guided for the pH parameter, that pH should be maintained between 6.8 to 7.2, that is near about neutral. So we have to check, we have to collect the sample, we have to analyze this sample, and we have to check whether this pH is between the 6.8 and 7.2. If it is not the case, then we have to take a corrective action in the process or in the wastewater treatment, right? So this pH is nothing but the potence of hydrogen ion concentration. Potence means strength or the power of hydrogen ion concentration. So this hydrogen ion concentration indicates the acidic or alkaline value of that wastewater. So if it is between the 0 and 7, then it is called as acidic. If it is between the 7 and 14, then it is called as basic. If it is at the 7, then it is called as neutral. So this 0 to 14 is called as pH scale. Then electrical conductivity. So what are the charge developed in that wastewater or already involved in that wastewater? So this charge or ions which are electrical conductor can be measured as a electrical conductivity. Then some parameter that is called as DO, that is dissolved oxygen. So on the basis of this dissolved oxygen, we can understand what exactly the quality of this wastewater is. Because if the dissolved oxygen is very less, generally if it is less than 4 ppm, then it adversely affects on the aquatic life. So due to this less than 4 ppm DO value, the fish or other aquatic animals may die. Then on the basis of this DO, we can calculate or measure the different parameters like COD and BOD also, that is chemical oxygen demand and biological oxygen demand. Then other parameters like arsenic, boron, mercury, selenium, sodium, and tin. So these are the different elements or metals which are present in the untreated sewage. So we have to analyze all these parameters because some of the parameters are poisonous, toxic, and which can harm to the aquatic animals as well as to the people. Then aluminum, barium, cadmium, chromium, copper, iron, lead, manganese, nickel, vanadium, zinc, magnesium, calcium, sodium, potassium. These are the different metals which may be present in the wastewater, that is called as effluent, and we have to analyze all these parameters because each and every metal, each and every element adversely affects on the aquatic life, adversely affect on the people or the health of the peoples. So we have to take care of these levels of all these elements. So there is another parameter, that is alkalinity. So we have discussed about this alkalinity, that pH is ranging from 7 to 40. Alkaline nature chemicals, then ammoniacal nitrogens. So we have to identify this nitrogen value. Then we have already discussed about the BOD and COD. Then suspended solids and dissolved solids. So if the solids are present in the effluent and if it is suspended in the wastewater or effluent, then it is called as suspended solids. If some solids are dissolved, like salt can be dissolved in water or sugar can be dissolved in water, so all these solids are called as dissolved solids, and the summation of these dissolved solids and suspended solids is called as total solids, that is TS. So TS is equal to TSS plus TDS. And nowadays the digital equipments or instruments are available for measuring these types of parameters. Then another parameters like nitrates, nitrites, phosphates, sulfates, and chloride. So all these parameters also should measure, and we have to study all the adverse impact of these different chemicals. Then there may be a herbicides, because in the farming or in the nearby companies, some farmers or some people are using these herbicides or pesticides or some other chemicals for killing these herbs, for killing this pest, for killing the insects, etc. And some part of these pesticides may be involved in the effluent. So we have to measure all these parameters. So this is called as characteristics of the effluents. And we are talking about the industrial effluent. So we must measure all these industrial effluents. So we have already discussed about this pesticide. Then there is another element like VOC, that is volatile organic compounds. So some organic compounds may be involved in the effluent, and the nature of these organic compounds are volatile, that is at the atmospheric temperature and pressure they are converting from the liquid to vapor. So vaporization phenomena is very easy for these VOC elements. So we have to measure these elements, that is chemical compounds. Then organotin compounds, phenolic compounds, then PCBs, that is polychlorinated biphenyls, then hydrocarbon oils, and PAH, that is polyaromatic hydrocarbons. So all these elements are having different adverse impacts on the environment, on the health, and that is why we have to measure, and we must sure about these. The levels of all these parameters should be under the maximum permissible limit with reference to the State Pollution Control Board guidelines. Right? Now we have discussed about these industrial effluent, their elements, characteristics, and monitoring purpose. Now the last point for this presentation is GBC. So what exactly the green building concept is? So a green word is involved in this building. So what does it mean? A green building is a building that in its design, construction, operation reduces or eliminates negative impacts, that is adverse impacts, and can create positive impacts on our climate and natural environment. So in this operation, that is designing of this building, construction of this building, operations of this building, all the activities should involve such elements, such activities that it is not going to harm the environment, it is not going to impact on the environment negatively, but it should create some positive signs, some positive impacts as far as the environment is concerned. And if it is done, then it is called as green building, right? So green building preserve precious natural resources and improve our quality of life. So from this structure you can understand what exactly the green building is. So in the operation, in the activities of the green building, we must go for the energy efficient activities. So one of the source is energy. So energy issues may be a case as far as the environment is concerned. So we must use the renewable energy sources wherever applicable. We must use the energy efficient equipments or instruments or activities should be done with the help of this energy efficient equipment wherever possible. And we must reduce the water consumption, and we must recycle this water in these activities. So if it is done, then we can save the water, we can recycle the water, we can reduce the water consumption, and we can reduce the energy consumption also, right? So these are the positive impacts on the environment, right? So as far as this design is concerned, so before designing the pre-building phase, that is called as, we must think of these construction materials, then different operations and different maintenance activities. And after um, using this building or after completing the cycle or life cycle of this building, we must think of the demolition activities or the disposal activities or disposal of the different materials which is involved under this constructions. So all these three phases must be think of, that is pre-phase, that is pre-building phase, building phase and post-building phase. So for the construction activities also, we must think of the waste material, that is nowadays we are using the thermal power station coal, and that is nothing but the waste from the thermal power station can be utilized, that is nothing but a dust from the thermal power station. With the help of some mechanical operation, we can use this uh, coal dust as a construction material with the concrete, and some other dust also we can utilize as a construction material. Nowadays we are also using the waste plastic in the construction activity. We are also using the agricultural waste in the construction activity. We are also thinking about some other type of waste in the construction activity. So these are the positive activities as far as the environment is concerned, and we can reduce the burden of the cement manufacturing or the stone manufacturing or some other construction materials, right? Then while doing the operations and maintenance tasks, whatever the materials we are using, we must reduce the quantity of material. We have to select the appropriate or eco-friendly products which are available in the market nowadays. So if you are going to think all these types of activities like material management, the waste material management, then obviously the overall building is nothing but a green building. Even after using this building for the demolition purpose, all these materials or most of the material, if it is eco-friendly product material, then there is no issue for the disposal. But if the hazardous material is used in the construction of material, then we have to go for the hazardous waste management, right? So to minimize, to reduce the burden on the hazardous waste management side, to reduce the burden on the solid waste management side, all these things are suitable if the eco-friendly products or the environmental friendly products are going to use in the construction activities for this building. So this is nothing but a green building concept, right? From this picture also you can understand what exactly the green building is. So this picture clearly shows you that this is the sunlight. So solar energy is the renewable energy source, free energy source which is available and which can be utilized in this building instead of artificial light, right? So in the daylight at least you can use this artificial light, so that we have to think of in the pre-phase building activity that this sunlight should be can be utilized in the hall or the in the building halls, right? So we are using this solar energy. Then if the tree plantation is there nearby building, then obviously ventilation, oxygen level can be maintained in this building. So there is cooling provision or natural cooling provision is also there with the help of these trees. So obviously the energy consumption due to fan, due to artificial light is again going to decrease. Then we can use the for solar energy for electricity generation for the same building. So solar energy is the renewable energy source which can be utilized. We can use the PV cells, that is photovoltaic cells, for the electricity generation. We can use the solar heaters for heating the water for using in the bathrooms, etc. We can also use the rooftop for the solar collection for the electricity generations also, and we can minimize the energy consumption, minimize the energy demand for the thermal power station, right? Then we can also think of rainwater harvesting, that is rainwater utilization systems in this building. If it is the case, then we can minimize the water consumption for this building, and we can recycle or reuse this water again and again in the same building. If we are going to use the latest technologies like microbial fuel reactor or the reverse osmosis, sand filter, then activated carbon filter, etc., then most of the water can be recycled for various purposes, right? So this is nothing but a green building concept where we can use the renewable energy sources like solar. We can use of the solar heating equipment, then photovoltaic cell for the electricity generation. Then that building should be designed in a such a way that artificial light should be utilized in a minimum quantity. Then oxygen level or the cooling can be done with the help of tree plantation near the building, etc. So there are a number of features for this GBC: efficient use of energy, water and other resources, use of renewable energy such as solar energy, pollution and waste reduction measures, and the enabling of reuse and recycling, good indoor environmental air quality, right? So these are the different features of this GBC. Use of materials that are non-toxic, ethical, sustainable, consideration of the environmental in design, construction and operation, consideration of the quality of the life of occupants in design, construction and operation, a design that enables adaptation to a changing environment. These are the different features of the green building concept. So this IGBC, that is the Indian Green Building Council, is a part of the Confederation of Indian Industry, that is CII, and it is formed in the year 2001. The vision of the council is to enable a sustainable built environment for all and facilitate India to be one of the global leader in the sustainable built environment by 2025. So with this motive, that is sustainable environment in India by 2025,